We are now on item B under final actions. And this is Councilors Pena, myself, Councilor Davis, and Councilor Gibson. This is Memorial 4, reaffirming the City of Albuquerque's commitment to diversity and immigrant-friendly status and to safeguarding the civil rights, safety, and dignity of all residents, whether they be immigrants, war refugees, people of color, Muslims, Jews, LGBTQ people, or people with disabilities. I move a do pass. There's a motion and a second from Councilor Pena. Councilor Pena, would you like to introduce this? And we do, of course, have another long list of folks who would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you read what the resolution was. I think we could probably just go ahead and move on to questions. You know, I just, for myself, I think I'll save my comments to the end.
Thank you. So we do have a number of people signed up to speak, and we are going to limit on this item since we do have a lengthy discussion about our general fund budget, and we've heard a lot from a lot of folks on the memorial. We're going to limit public comment time to 1.5 minutes for this segment, and we have many of the same folks signed up to speak, but we'll move forward. We'll start with, I'm going to name, I know that there are people also upstairs because of the overfilling of the chambers, and then, so if you are upstairs in the 9th floor, we'll try to read 5 names now instead of 3. So if you're upstairs, you hear your name, when you first hear your name, come on down, and that'll give you time to get down the elevator and get down here to speak if you're still up there. So we'll get started. I'm going to read 5 names. The first 3, please come up to the front as we did before, and you'll be ready to speak when your name is called. The first 5 people are Father Vincent Chavez, Father Leon Vigil, Marco Nunez, Mariana Anaya, and Rosemary Blanchard. Father Vincent, are you going to?
Councillor Benton and councillors, just concluding the words of Archbishop John Charles Wester. On this issue, it is possible and necessary to stay true to our American values and to remember that welcoming the stranger and staying safe within our homeland are not situations that are mutually exclusive. We can do both. Keep our nation safe and welcome and resettle immigrants and refugees who are fleeing extreme violence or economic hardship. Thank you for your courage and commitment towards seeking the well-being of the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Father. Father Vigil, going to pass. Thank you, sir. Next is Marco Nunez, and let me read the next 4 people after Marco. Mariana Anaya, Rosemary Blanchard, Cynthia Jaramillo, and Tad Namiski. Is Marco Nunez here? He may have left. We'll go to the next person, Mariana Anaya.
Hello, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Mariana Anaya, and I am here again this evening on behalf of the Albuquerque Teachers Federation in partnership with our friends at El Centro. As unionists, we know that the only way to move forward is together. We'll continue to stand side by side with our students and with our immigrant families, quite simply because it's the right thing to do. As educators, it's our job to ensure that our students are inquisitive, that they're creative, they're imaginative, and that they care about the world around them. I'd like to reiterate that we're fortunate that APS has a safe schools policy that ensures that all students are safe on campus. However, our students also need to feel safe when they walk home from school, when they play in the park, and any time they receive a knock at the door. That's the only way they can continue to be our future innovators. I'd like to echo something that my friend Justin from the Immigrant Faith Coalition said about restorative justice. ATF deeply believes in the principles of restorative justice. We've worked with our Board of Ed, who had the courage to implement restorative justice in our schools, just as they had the courage to implement safe schools policies. As we continue to work with APS on their safe schools policies, we ask that our city council members not only reaffirm their commitment to our families, but that you continue to work toward a community that thrives because our children are safe and remain unseparated from their families.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mariana. So I'm going to read the next 5 names. Again, the first 3, please come on down to get prepared to speak. Rosemary Blanchard, Cynthia Jaramillo, Tad Nemiski, and Barbara Grothus.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm Rosemary Blanchard from the Albuquerque chapter of the United Nations Association, and I have a written statement with me, so I will submit that. But I would like to reiterate that what this council is doing is actually upholding the good name of the United States in the world the way our Senate said we would when they ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and said, we are a federal republic. And therefore, all of this doesn't get done by the central government. It's the local government, the state government, that carry the good name of the United States, and that is what you are doing. And I want to thank you very much for it. I look forward to further development at the local level of upholding our good name, no matter what certain people in the White House may be doing. We are better than that, and thank you for that. And I'll turn this over to the...
Just hand that to the staff. And Ms. Blanchard, again, when was that ratified by the Senate?
That was ratified by the Senate in 1992.
Okay.
And what I discovered it when I was doing some legal research ages ago. What I noticed, nobody at the state and local level had ever heard of it.
Interesting.
So the Senate ratified it, but then the follow-up that should have happened of saying, okay, state and local governments, now do your part. Uphold the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is considered one of the bills of rights under the UN Declaration of Human Rights. A whole opportunity was lost, but I like to say it was lost for a time. We can always rediscover our responsibility at the local level, and there was never a better time.
Well, thank you for bringing it back. That's a really interesting point, I think, for the debate, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Ms. Jaramillo, Mr. Nemiski, Barbara Grothus, Shelley Alonso Marsden, and Margarita Fuentes.
President Benton, council members, I'll be brief since I already spoke. On behalf of the Hispano Chamber and our board members and our members, I just want to thank you and congratulate you for your compassion. And again, I just urge you to support the memorial, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nemiski, followed by Barbara Grothus and Shelley Alonso Marsden.
Thank you. Well, how much time do I have?
A minute and a half.
I'm sorry?
A minute and a half.
You guys already omit me from public comment.
I stated earlier what we were, there's the decision of the
I
chair.
haven't
A minute
had
and
a
a half.
chance to
Please
speak at
start.
public comment. I'm sorry?
Your time is starting.
Thank you. I know you all liberal. You are the biggest one. Democrat, liberal. Well, wait for President Donald Trump. We see what's happened. I know what you're gonna do. I don't have to predict it, I know. Now, yes, I am supporting immigration. I am, repeat, supporting legal immigration. Those are the rules. I went by the rule. Yes, I am immigrant. I had to wait 6 months in Italy to get my, I went to US Embassy, no. I had to go by the rules. So the rules should be applied to everyone. Here is legal citizen. What's next? Legal and illegal citizen. Next, they can vote, legal and illegal. Well, very interesting. Well, UNM, CNM, having policy, don't ask well, they get state and federal grants. Food stamps, everything that should be for legal citizens in legal immigrant. And I can go on and on. You don't let me to speak up.
Thank you, sir. Next is Barbara Grothus, Shelley Alonso Marsden, Margarita Fuentes, and Juliana Salinas.
Good evening, President Benton and City Council. You know, I'm a first-generation New Mexican. My parents came here, they met and got married, but I am the first generation and the firstborn in my family. It's really only by virtue of my family's place in the world that they came to the United States at a time when perhaps we didn't have so much of an idea about what was legal and what was not. My great-grandparents were all immigrants. It just seems to me that in 2000, when this memorial was passed unanimously by the City Council, that nothing very much has changed in the way of our nation outside of the dictates of a new administration that wants to disqualify people who are hardworking in our community. As a property owner, and I'm sure most of you own property, you'll know that when people come to fix your roof, fix your toilets, do yard work, I think our new car salesmen probably owe a big piece of their business to the immigrant community who buy new cars, look at what they drive, newer cars than I have. These are hardworking people. They're contributing to our community, and they should feel safe. Their children should feel safe in our schools, and I think it's incumbent on you to reauthorize the memorial. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Grothus. Shelley Alonso Marsden, Margarita Fuentes, Juliana Salinas, Gary, I think it's Bulow, and Jesse Barnes.
Hello, President Benton and members of the council. My name is Shelley Alonso Marsden. I'm a community mental health researcher in Albuquerque. My job is fully funded by federal grant money, and as I'm sure that you members of the council are aware, the president has threatened to cut federal grant money for so-called sanctuary cities, I apologize. And I'm not going to lie that makes me terrified every day about losing my livelihood based on the decisions that the council and the local and state leadership make in the next few months. However, my fear pales in comparison to the fears experienced by my undocumented family members, clients, and neighbors every day. As a mental health provider, I am acutely aware of how much fear and anxiety exists for immigrants and all other minority groups right now. It is affecting people's ability to work, to study, and to get through their day. I'm the daughter of a Mexican immigrant, and my family moved to the United States when my mom was 8 months pregnant with me. I've lived the American dream, and in a few short months, I'll be getting my doctoral degree. And I just hope that Memorial 17-4 will help to protect the American dream for other children and families in New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fuentes, Mr. Salinas, Mr. Bulow, then Jesse Barnes and Peggy Norton.
Mr. President and members of the council, my name is Margarita Fuentes. I'm here representing West. I am a bilingual business consultant with West, and West is a nonprofit organization that was founded by women for women 28 years ago, and over time we have expanded to offer services to anyone who has the passion and commitment to pursue their dream of owning their own business. We at West assist entrepreneurs at any stage of business development, from start to day-to-day operations to growing and selling their business. Every day, I work with Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs that are starting their businesses or already own a business, and they actually have employees. I see firsthand the impact of immigrants' many contributions to the economic fabric of our city. The business our clients own include daycare, cleaning, construction, restaurants, farms, photography, schools, and even small accounting firms. Working at West gives me an opportunity to help the Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs in Albuquerque, and I have seen how hard working these individuals are and how they contribute to the economy, not only by paying their taxes and hiring others, but also by improving our lives and helping all of us in our community. We at West believe in no barriers to entry to our services, and West supports keeping Albuquerque an immigrant-friendly city so that we can continue supporting many of those immigrants who, in turn, by providing the services, support many of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Julianne Salinas. Hi, sorry.
No worries. Hi, I am Julianne Salinas. As you may remember, last month I was here and speaking in support of this memorial and speaking in particular about the public safety for both immigrants and domestic violence survivors. I was going to speak tonight with this case study from Enlace Comunitaria, where I serve as associate director, and give you an example of the chilling effects of the threat of deportation on survivors of domestic violence. But instead, I'm going to speak about my own experience. Like many Americans, I am a descendant of immigrants. On my mother's side, my ancestors arrived during a time when the vetting of immigrants meant passing a lice check and surviving dysentery on the crossing from Ireland. But on my father's side, I am a first-generation American. My father came to the United States from Honduras with my grandmother, who was fleeing a very abusive husband, my grandfather. Today, my grandmother, my father, aunts and uncles would not be allowed to enter the United States legally. And what would have happened to them at that time would have been a death sentence. Many immigrants, like my grandfather and my grandmother, and my father, are seeking safety. They are seeking, by deputizing and cooperating with ICE, this impedes on the safety of immigrants and survivors of domestic violence. For individuals, families, and society as a whole, the safety is very compromised. I thank you for your support and commitment to the safety of Albuquerque's residents, all Albuquerque's residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speakers are Larry Bulow, Jesse Barnes, Peggy Norton, Raina Irenfucht, and Sally Beers. Mr. Bulow doesn't seem to be here. Jesse Barnes. All right, Ms. Norton, and I'll read a couple more names to come on. Elena Sharnoff and Dinah Vargas. Ms. Norton, thank you.
I'm Peggy Norton. Good evening, Councilor Benton, councilors. I'm here representing the North Valley Coalition. I listened to the comments last time around on TV at home. I think that's the most wonderful thing, because I was going to be late and I wanted to see where it was. I decided this was an important enough issue to submit to our entire board rather than just our executive committee. It unanimously passed. The North Valley Coalition represents 14 North Valley neighborhoods. So on personal, I do have a couple personal comments. There but for fortune go you or I. I'm grateful for where I was born. If an ICE agent accidentally knocks on my door, I don't fear deportation. I fear for what can happen to my neighbors who only wanted a better life. I fear for what is happening to our country, creating the current climate of alienation and hatred. I fear that these deportation orders are the beginning, as Mr. Garduño warned. It's important to stop these actions in the beginning and not wait until it's too late. Please pass this memorial and strengthen protections when possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and representing the coalition, Peggy. Renia Ehrenfucht? Renia? And then following Renia is Sally Beers, Elena Sharnoff, Dinah Vargas, and Tina Kachel.
So I am Renier Ehrenfeld, and I am also here really thanking the council members for bringing this forward and asking you to reaffirm this memorial and also work with our immigrant communities to work on other ways that we can really stand up against all actions that make anyone unsafe, violate their civil rights, and make them unsafe in our city. I am the director of the Community and Regional Planning Program at the University of New Mexico. And so I kind of speak to you from different perspectives today. I am a child of a mother who came as a refugee, as a child, and a father who came looking for work as an adult. And so I am also a child of immigrants. And so, of course, that matters to me in that context. But also, our students are experiencing like increased incidences of racism, of hate in the city. I mean, some on campus, but some off campus. And, that's really, it's really critical that we stand up against this. And so anyway, I just kind of continue to encourage, that like many voices really say that this really matters and that we should stand up.
Thank you. Sally Beers, followed by Elena Sharnoff. Ms. Beers? I don't see her. Ms. Sharnoff, Elena Sharnoff. Okay, you're going to waive your opportunity to speak. Next 5 people to speak: Dinah Vargas, Tina Kitchell, Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, and Tiska Blankenship. Dinah here? I do not see her. How about Ms. Kitchell? Ms. Cedillo Lopez and Tiska Blankenship, and then Eric Griego.
This one?
That one there is probably better.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, councilors. My name is Tina Cashel, and I have been a resident of Albuquerque for 30 years. I'm also here as the clerk of the Albuquerque Monthly Meeting, or Quakers. Finally, I'm here as the mother of an immigrant. My husband and I adopted our now 14-year-old daughter from China when she was 14 months old. You may not know that until the year 2000, international adoptees were not granted automatic citizenship. Luckily, my daughter was. So we are now seeing adult adoptees who have grown up in the U.S. since childhood or infancy being deported to countries of their birth, places they have no other connection to other than it was where they were born. I share this as one example among many you have heard this evening of the ways our increasingly draconian immigration and deportation policies are already impacting the most vulnerable members of our society, even those we have loved since infancy. 75 years ago this week, the President of the United States signed the order sending 120,000 Japanese Americans to internment camps. Before that, in 1882, our government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. Until now, the only law targeting a specific ethnic group. I'll speed up. We must not repeat this shameful history. Instead, the unanimous passage of the memorial in 2000 was an honorable moment in Albuquerque's recent history. I urge you to vote for Memorial 17-4 today, and additionally to implement greater safeguards against the harsh provisions being passed at the federal level, such as limiting data sharing between law enforcement and ICE. I urge you to stand with the moral consistencies of compassion and vote for Memorial 17-4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, followed by Tiska Blankenship.
Council President Benton, councilors, I am the Executive Director of Enlace Comunitario with the mission of eliminating domestic violence through prevention and intervention services, and our target outreach is to the Latino immigrant communities in central New Mexico. I want to commend the council for considering M17-4 and standing up to a federal action that is going to be chaotic and is causing terror in our communities. Prior to yesterday and the Homeland Security Directive that was signed by John Kelly, ICE had issued several directives, including safe communities and interim guidelines for complying with the Violence Against Women Act, and created an environment in which people could feel relatively comfortable. After yesterday, the community is terrorized. They no longer, not even our clients who are protected, in my view, by the Violence Against Women Act, feel safe. And so it is very, very important to send a strong message to our communities that we will not stand for this and we will stand up to these actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tiska Blankenship, you here? Tiska is coming down here, I believe. And then followed by Tiska will be Eric Griego, Kevin Bean, Marion Berg, and Shakir Farid Abdullah.
I just wanted to say I've been working with the New Mexico Faith Coalition for Immigrant Justice for about 6 years. It's a great organization, and by working with them, I found many friends, and I found family in immigrant people who are here. So, they're lovely. They deserve to be supported. We need to keep them safe. Please do vote for this memorial and keep our city safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Griego, our former, I guess, well, colleague of
Yeah.
Brad Winter anyway. Certainly,
Yes,
but
I
he's
don't
a
know that anyone
he's a
else-
colleague anyway, even though
Yes.
he's not a.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, thank you so much. My name is Eric Riego, former Albuquerque City Council and State Senator, and currently representing the New Mexico Working Families, which is a nonprofit organization that with several thousand members here in the state. And we work to support and elect and hold accountable elected officials at all levels on their work on behalf of working families. So these are not normal times. This is really not about Republicans or Democrats. Just because I'm a Democrat, I will not defend FDR's decision to inter thousands of Japanese Americans or to deny Anne Frank's family entry to the U.S. as political refugees. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. So I ask all of you, current and former colleagues, and that we really rise above party. You know, this proposal by President Trump, I think, is draconian, as others have said, and it's frankly un-American. The new ICE enforcement mandate is not about public safety. It's about playing to the worst fears and instincts of Americans, the American public. I just want to recite some studies that have been carried out over 100 years quickly. We know two things about immigrants. They're less likely to commit serious crimes or be behind bars than native-born, and high rates of immigration are actually associated with lower rates of violent crime and property crime. This holds true for both legal immigrants and those who are unauthorized, regardless of their country or their level of education. So those are the facts. They're not alternate facts. They're not fake news. That's what the empirical data shows us for over a century. So let me just close by saying I commend you all for doing this, and that we need to stand together on this, as not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans. And I commend you all for doing this, and I hope you will keep pushing this forward. Thank you all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Kevin Bean, followed by Marion Berg, Shakir Farid Abdullah, Natalie Nicotine, and Mimi Lopez.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the council, with regard to statements I've read, that this memorial is merely symbolic and has no real value, I respectfully point out that symbols can, in fact, be very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Marion Berg, followed by Shakir Farid Abdullah, Natalie Nicotine, Mimi Lopez, and Alan Wagman. Is Marion Berg here? Okay. Next is Shakir Farid Abdullah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shakir Farid Abdullah. I'm a local community organizer and most definitely a human rights advocate. I am a Muslim here in America, and I really want to express my gratitude to the people that came here in defense and speaking and standing up for the human rights and the dignity of Muslims, of refugees, and of the immigrants. But I'm here right here to first thank you for initiating this memorial, and hopefully it passes and it goes through. But I'm here to challenge each and every single one of you to walk with us, all right? Pay attention, right? To walk with us, to bleed with us, to sweat with us, right? To march down these streets, to demand fair treatment and equality and equity in all measures, right? Because this is our city. This is Albuquerque. This is Albuquerque. This is our Ummah, right? Every single one of you, march with us, okay? Stand with us. They may try to pass these things, and they may do things in other states and other cities, but this is your city, and all these people right here, these are your people, su gente, right? Stand with us because we need you to be vibrant and active and strong and say hell no to this racist regime and oppressive government and these systems and these policies and laws, right? It violates our human dignity, our humanity. You need to stand with us. I will be looking with you, and I'll have a pair of sneakers for you right with me, all right? All right,
Thank
most
you.
definitely. Thank you so much.
Is Natalie here? Natalie, followed by Mimi Lopez, Alan Wagman, Samia Assad, and George Donovan.
Good evening, President Benton and City Council members. My name's Natalie Nicotine, and I'm a social worker in this community, and I also work for the Native American Voters Alliance. The Native American Voters Alliance strongly supports the memorial to make Albuquerque an immigrant-friendly city. We recognize the inherent value and worth of each person in New Mexico, and we believe that Trump's executive order to turn away, ban, and target the immigrant population, it's very concerning to us. And as we know all too well, the consequences of such bigotry, discrimination, and prejudice, the discriminatory treatment has a deep impact on individuals, families, and communities, and it has the potential to hinder our success, our future success. And we want communities in New Mexico to flourish in a humane, inclusive, and helpful manner, and we do not want immigrant families, youth, and elders to live in constant fear and anxiety. Targeting them at work and in their homes is an imprudent use of our taxes and our tax dollars, and we urge Albuquerque City Councilors to take a stand to ensure we are not separating families, harming our economy, or undermining New Mexico's tradition and values. And by becoming an immigrant-friendly city, Albuquerque will be fueled with diversity, skill, talent, and opportunity, all of which are important elements to community success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Ms. Lopez, followed by Alan Wagman, Ms. Assad, George Donovan, and Karen Cathy.
Good evening. My name is Mimi Lopez. Like many other people in this room, I'm a member of El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos. I also do volunteer casework with the New Mexico Faith Coalition for Immigrant Justice. I want to thank you for having this memorial on your agenda this evening. I also want to thank you in advance for voting in favor of it. I'm confident that you will do so because I believe you want to do the right thing, which obviously is to affirm your stand for justice, inclusiveness, and respect for every person who lives in Albuquerque. That said, I invoke the maxim that states, actions speak louder than words, which in this case means that you must have practices put in place that will put teeth in your words. This is really urgent in the prevailing harsh political climate. You could start by permanently banning APD from entering into any type of 287G agreement. You could also declare all non-public areas of city-owned property and facilities to be off limits to immigration authorities unless they are bearing a warrant signed by a judge. And I'm sure there are many other policies, if we had time, that we could present. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wagman, followed by Ms. Assad, George Donovan, and Karen Cathy.
Good evening, President Benton, members of council. Donald Trump, in his campaign, used a lot of anti-Semitic symbols and dog whistles. He recently was asked to condemn anti-Semitic actions, and he told the reporter who asked him to be quiet. Twice in the last month since Trump was elected, the Jewish Community Center has had to be evacuated for bomb threats. My wife works in the Jewish Community Center. A Jewish sage, Hillel, who lived just before Jesus, had 3 questions. The first one was, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? So I speak here tonight for myself as a Jew. This has to stop, and this memorial is the first step towards stopping it. Hillel's second question was, if I am only for myself, what am I? I like to think that I stand up for people other than myself. This memorial is targeted at a lot of communities, but it's targeted mainly at the immigrants right now, and I'm standing up for them. I hope that before any of you vote on this memorial and on any other issue, no matter how innocuous it seems when it comes before council, that you ask yourselves those 2 questions. And if you vote in a way that only reflects your own personal interest, you ask yourself Hillel's 3rd question. If not now, when?
Thank you, Mr. Wagman. Ms. Assad? She spoke before. I don't see her. Samia Assad. George Donovan, and then Karen Cathy is the last person signed up to speak.
There's an old Japanese proverb that says, if you want to see the effect of the present, look at the cause of the past. If you want to see the effect of the future, look at the cause of the present. 80 years ago, 3 ships left Germany filled with people. They went to England, they were turned away. They went to Canada, they were turned away. They went to the United States, they were turned away. They went to Cuba, they were turned away. No one would give them solitude. They went back to Germany and were the first to go to the death camps.
He didn't sign up.
The blood of those people are on the leaders that turned them away. I can't express, I don't have the time, I don't have the words to express the need to pass this bill and stand up as an example to the United States to support these people who need it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is George Donovan, or excuse me, that was George Donovan. Karen Cathy, is Karen here? And then followed by Art Tannenbaum is actually our last speaker.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for bringing up the memorial again. And thank you, Pat Davis, you're my representative. And you know, in the International District, it's called International District for a reason. So I wanted to just, I don't know how I end up being last all the time, but anyway. Here, I just wanted to close with this. Oops, hold on, sorry. I don't know it by heart, but I will get there. Just with the quote that we all should know, or at least have heard of sometime. And how funny my computer's gonna be like this. But anyway, it's the quote from the Statue of Liberty. And we should all know what it is, right? At least heard of it somewhere. To just remember that the Statue of Liberty represents something, and all of us are probably immigrants unless we were native born, like Native Americans. Just to remember that I'm Filipino and I'm first born American here. And thank you for the memorial. Each one of you, just look back in your history. You know, we're supposed to be together for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll start with what I remember to be the beginning and see if anybody else can fill in. Give me, you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to live free. And that's the part I remember. Who else can fill it in? Anyone? All right. Thank you. Last speaker is Art Tannenbaum. Perhaps he has that memorized.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council, the governing body of the City of Albuquerque, Albuquerque's legislative authority. Thank you for your time and your public service. I recognize that your time is very valuable. There are a lot of powerful intellects in these meetings, and I do appreciate your time. I could talk all night about how much I value your valuable time, but you've cut my time short. So what's going on in Washington, D.C., according to my understanding, some of the language of the legislation, quite a bit of it actually, violates due process. For example, somebody who's even suspected of maybe committing a crime, you know, it's un-American, as people have said earlier this evening. So I want to thank you in advance also for approving this measure, amended or whatever, and hopefully it will be reinforced with the resolution, and actions do speak louder than words. And yes, we the people need you for your leadership, and you leaders need us for our grassroots support. And if anything was learned last November, it's just that. You people, you political officials, elected and appointed, need the support of the people you serve. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment. And so we're back on the memorial. Who would like to speak? Councilor Pena?
I'll get started. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I just really want to thank everyone for being here this evening. It's really heartwarming to see so many people coming together to support people. I think that's the key for this evening. And I also want to thank a lot of the organizations that came out and spoke and are in support. I want to thank the Hispano, the Catholic Church, El Centro, all these different organizations, again, in support of people. It's very interesting. I was, yesterday when I was at the rally, I talked about a couple of things that had happened recently to me and my family. As you know, or many of you may or may not know, I live in the southwest Albuquerque, born and raised. My family has been here for generations, and I just recently had some people ask me some questions in terms of introducing the memorial and why, and then the question was posed to me, so what part of Mexico are you from? And it was very interesting, and I hadn't really, I'm lighter complected, and I can kind of pass until I start to speak, and then you hear my mocha come out in terms of my Spanish. But anyway, I pointed to the ground because this is where my family has been for generations, and looking at this memorial and the resolution that we already had in place, I started getting some questions from community members in terms of being afraid of what's happening. Last week we had West Side Day at the state legislature, and my husband, there was 1,100 kids from Southwest area schools, Northwest area schools, and there was a young man sitting by the podium, and he got my husband's attention, and he asked him, he was kind of fearful of being there that day because he knew he was going to something, legislative, and he was going to learn the legislative process. I think the young man thought maybe President Trump was actually in the building. He asked my husband, and it was really unfortunate. This young man, he was from Kit Carson, and he's 8 years old, and he asked my husband if my husband knew President Trump, and my husband said that he didn't, but he told him that he was fearful of being there and fearful of what was going to happen to his family, that they may potentially be deported, and for an 8-year-old to have this fear at night, I think that's just terrible. It's terrible that we live in a society where we have children in fear of their families being deported, and this memorial bringing it up. I think it's just, it's something that we already as a city do. I think as a city, that's who we are. We're about people. If you look at New Mexico, I think the children that were here earlier and spoke from Georgia O'Keeffe, they talked about being proactive, right? And I think that's what we're doing by introducing this memorial, is being proactive and showing our community, the residents of the city of Albuquerque, that we are already an immigrant-friendly city and that we welcome people. And that's part of what makes Albuquerque and New Mexico great is the diversity that we have. And you know, I know the young man's probably not listening this evening, but you know, I'm here in support of him and the families of immigrant families, refugees. So showing that we're, as a city, we support people. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Councilor Pena, thank you for working so hard, and Nancy in your office for working so hard to get this right. And to all the councilors who stuck it out with us tonight to hear from everybody, whether we agree or disagree, to listen to the people of this city. I think it's incredibly telling, and each of us got a few emails from folks who oppose this or see a political opportunity, I think, in some of this. But I think it's incredibly telling that of all the speakers, Mr. President, we've had in the nearly 2 hours we've done this, we've had one who said this was a bad idea. To Councilor Pena's point, folks stood up and said, we take care of each other. Some folks upstairs have been texting us pictures of a room full in our council committee room, full of people sitting on the floor, don't tell the fire marshal, that are waiting on us to see what we do down here tonight. And because they can't get in to come express their support for their neighbors who are too afraid to come into this building because they don't yet know exactly how the city is going to respond to all these new threats, and we will not be bullied. Look, each of us at some point in our lives, and for those of you who know that I like to ramble, I wrote this down, so it will be quick. Each of us at some point in our lives has felt unwelcome somewhere. It's the way we are built. But that place should never be our city. Albuquerque has chosen time and time again to take care of our neighbors, even when other people wouldn't. I think about other fights that we've had recently, like taking care of our economy and the workers who needed some help. When the state legislature put politics ahead of their responsibility, Albuquerque voters went to the ballot box and voted to raise the minimum wage for our lowest paid workers so that they could live in our city and not have to move somewhere else. When we were fed up waiting on the state or the federal government to create a behavioral health system that actually worked to create the people in our community who are in crisis every day and needed help, our voters went to the ballot box and passed a bill to tax ourselves, to build a system to take care of our neighbors who probably weren't voting anyway because it was the right thing to do and other people wouldn't do it. And I see, sitting here tonight, I see some of our old justice fighters. Obviously, our friend Ray was here earlier. Sally Alice Thompson, I think, has been at every fight for decades. Ms. McMaster, to name a few. But I'm also encouraged in these last few weeks and months that we see a lot of new faces to these movements for justice, like our DACA families and our Dreamers. One of our speakers earlier tonight stood up here with a little toddler in hand, and that was an undocumented family. And I'm here to tell you that child was not a criminal, and this city should not make that child illegal. We are here to take care of each other. As a police officer working in Washington, D.C., I remember a woman responding to a call while I was still in training, responding to a call from a woman whose neighbor had finally called because she had heard her being beaten so many times. The victim was afraid to call because she and her family were undocumented, and she was afraid that if the police came, they would deport her and her husband, and the fear of losing her husband to immigration and tearing up their business and their family was greater than the fear of her husband coming home drunk in the middle of the night. I haven't forgotten that when our friends talked about the concern about calling the police for domestic violence. And I cannot imagine, though I don't have children, what one would do, our teachers, what one would do when the door closes at 3:30 in the afternoon and there's one child left whose mom didn't get to say goodbye, and how we do that, and that will not be our city. Look, anyway, I'm going to get through this. Sally from the North Valley reminded us of the old proverb that but for fortune go I, and I think Ray talked about privilege. And I'm starting, as I grow older, to realize more and more of my own, but I'm also reminded that here in the city in the last year or so, as a gay man standing in Morningside Park after the shooting in Orlando, some of you heard me say this earlier this week, like, I found comfort in a prayer from a pastor and a deacon from the AME Church, and the blessings from one of the imams from our Islamic Center on Yale. And when our immigrant community felt threatened in Albuquerque a few weeks ago, the Islamic Center opened their door to the Latino and Hispanic immigrant community who also felt fear because our folks in the Islamic and Muslim community had been through this for a few years longer and knew what to do and how to give them advice. That is the type of city that I want to live in. And so, you know, in this new political environment, Mr. President, I think it's cities and local communities that are standing up and having these conversations about our values. I'm encouraged that this was a civic discourse tonight. I'm encouraged that so many people took time out of their day when very often at these meetings we have 3 people that sit up here and the same 3 people that sit in the same front row and give us comments, which are important, but it's so encouraging we have so many extra people. So I'm reminded that each of us has felt unwelcome somewhere in the past, and that place should not be our city. And so I'm very proud to vote for this resolution tonight and to work with the rest of our city departments to be sure that our rules going forward and how we deal with our community welcome everyone and take care of each other. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the beginning of this meeting this evening, we all stood up together as Americans, as immigrants, as Democrats and Republicans, and stated, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Those are very important words. I had an opportunity, and I was blessed to be in Washington, D.C., when the debate on immigration was going on, and the co-sponsors were Ted Kennedy and John McCain. I was very hopeful at that time that we in this country would see major comprehensive immigration reform. Today, that battle continues. And President Trump should be talking about comprehensive immigration reform and not deportation. When you see the young kids come up here tonight with their families, it's sad because, as Councilor Davis stated, some of these individuals may be undocumented, the parents, but these young children are Americans and deserve the same opportunity that every other American in this country is entitled to. That is their right, their human right, and their constitutional right. One of the other issues that we are dealing with as a city, and I want to personally say thank you, and Councilor Brad Winter is not here right now. On December, I didn't see him back. I didn't see him back there, I apologize. On December 15th of 2000, Councilor Winter, along with 8 other councilors, supported Albuquerque in being an immigrant-friendly city. Our children and our families, thank you, Councilor Winter, for that support. Our immigrants in this community should not live in fear. I do not support individuals that come to this country and support serious crimes. We're here to sell drugs. But many of the families that are here to make an honest living. And we should be working side by side with Mexico in building our economy and building their economy so they also can create great jobs in their nation like we need to create here in our nation. We need to be a country that is united and not divided. We live in the United States of America, not the divided states of this nation. Yet today we are facing probably some of the biggest challenges that we have faced in the history of this nation. We must work together as a city, and I support this memorial tonight. There can only be 4 sponsors on the legislation, otherwise I would have been the 5th sponsor, and I apologize for not being the 5th sponsor. But I want to thank the many people that came out tonight to work with this city and to work together in uniting this country and uniting Albuquerque. We have a tremendous battle on our hands, and I would hope, again, that our president works on comprehensive immigration reform and starts to unite this country and not to divide this nation.
Counselor Gibson, and then Counselor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'll be brief. You know, we're turning into an us versus them society. And particularly, I think that's been very apparent in the past month or few days. We need to stop that, and I see this memorial as, you know, one tiny step towards doing that. You know, we're all immigrants, unless you're Native American. We all got here one way or another. My ancestors came from Finland and Ireland under very dire times. They you know, pooled their money so a couple of younger children could get married and come to this country. And I think that's the case for all of us, like I say, unless we're Native American. So being a country of immigrants, we don't just get to come here and close the door. That's not what we are. That's not the country we are. And of many of the immigrants, or some of them, I don't know the numbers, I won't even pretend to, there exists a subset of that of refugees who would, if they are returned to their original country, may not survive, or may be jailed. And unless, and I guess that's like a hard concept for some people to really understand and internalize. And until you've made friends with people who are here because of a political difference or some other reason that they can't go home. And I think that we need to be kinder and more accepting of those people. So I'm very proud to have my name on this. I'm sorry, Councilor Sanchez, that we couldn't get your name on there too, but I know that you're there in spirit. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I was on this council when we passed R-00-151. In fact, I think as president, and I even signed that. And there's been a lot of talk about this is reaffirming basically what the council did in 2000. And I've just got one question. You know, we've been an immigrant-friendly city since 2000, ever since I've been on this council. And I think the council, as well as the administration, has done a really good job of keeping it that way. This bill, this memorial, though, is a little different, and there's one phase that makes it different. And I was going to do an amendment to change this, but I'm not going to do that. But I just want to make it clear. It says, whereas R-0151, this is in the memorial, states that the city shall not discriminate on basis of a person's national origin and will treat all persons with respect and dignity regardless of immigration status. And whereas R-00151 states that no municipal resources shall be used to identify individuals' immigration status or apprehend persons on the sole basis of immigration status, and this is the phrase that's not in the new part, unless otherwise required by law to do so. So that's the difference, and I was not really sure why the sponsors didn't put that in there when they were reaffirming this. And you know, I absolutely believe in R-151, and I still do, and we've done it for many, many years. Some of the issues I have is, though, that we can't break the law in making sure we do that. And I didn't know if someone wanted to comment on that, one of the sponsors did or not, but otherwise I support R-151, and I support the majority of what's in this memorial. Although we need to reiterate that it's a memorial, it has no impact of law whatsoever. It is a statement. It doesn't even change R-151. R-151, as voted and written, will maintain it. And I know it just asserts of what we're about, and I believe this city council is about being an immigrant-friendly city, and we've been that way ever since 2000, that I know. So if anybody wanted to answer that, why that, and I was going to amend it, but I'm not going to do that.
Councilor
I
Pena.
can take a stab at it, but I'd probably have to defer to staff to answer some additional questions. But the memorial, you're correct, it doesn't have the force of law, but what does have the force of law is the resolution that I appreciate that you actually introduced back in 2000, and this is just a reaffirmation of that. But if you look at the memorial on line 28, it does state, unless otherwise required by law to do so. So it's actually in this current form.
Okay. Councilor Davis.
I appreciate that very much. And Councilor, Mr. President, I apologize. I wanted to acknowledge the people who sent us personal messages that weren't able to join us today. I know the room upstairs is full and others. I think we printed out earlier today, and councilors have had a chance to look at them, 675 personal messages to the city councilors from residents all across the city who weren't able to join us tonight. We wanted to acknowledge to do that. I know some of our immigrant advocacy groups also provided the council with a number of other petitions from what started as one group and I think became 50 different organizations, faith groups, community advocacy, neighborhood associations who joined that cause. And I want to acknowledge that this really is a citywide effort and did that. And I neglected to do that earlier, and I wanted to be sure to give credit to the folks who put their work here because we did get to see them and we did read them and have the chance to look at them. And so I want to thank them for that. Thank you, Mr. President. That's
Thank you. Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know sometimes the way we vote makes you think that we have different beliefs than others, but I think you need to know that everyone up here is a very strong advocate for immigration. There are different kinds of immigration, and I'm a very strong proponent of immigration. As other councilors said, we're probably all descendants of immigrants. That's the way it works. And we've all heard from our constituents. We've all heard from different people in the city. And I think one of the major things we need to know is this is simply restating what we're already doing in the city of Albuquerque. We're not changing anything. It is the way it is. But I would like to tell you something read to you some portions of an email that I got from someone who is also very much immigrant friendly. And this is addressed to Councilor Davis, and it said, the question on your petition asks if I believe Albuquerque should be immigrant friendly. I want to know, what does this truly mean? Does it mean we disregard our immigration rules? As a native New Mexican, this means I was born here in Albuquerque. I have lived here for years and resided in different areas. My family has been very involved here in the city. My family has served our country in the armed forces. They served in World War II. They survived the Bataan Death March, Korean War, Vietnam, and Iraq. They have fought to keep our freedom, which my family has not taken for granted. We also have family members who came from Europe and Cuba and had to follow the immigration laws, did what was expected, become a United States citizen, and assimilated into the American culture. Our eldest son was born in France while my husband was stationed in France, and we made our son go through the citizenship exam. He answered the questions asked by the judge that allowed him to become a U.S. citizen, so he would not have a dual citizenship. And most importantly, he was 6 years old and passed on his own. I do believe, personally, not reading anymore, that we should be an immigrant-friendly city. I do believe we should support and help immigrants who are here, who are perhaps here without papers, illegally. We should help them become citizens of our country. If they want to be here, they should love our country and our city as much as we do, and they should make the sacrifice to become citizens. I will not support this piece of legislation, simply two reasons. Number one, immigration is legal immigration, not illegal immigration. But number two, this piece of legislation, for the people who support it, too many will believe that we are now a sanctuary city, which is not recognized, and the people who don't support it will believe that we are now a sanctuary city, which is not what this says. No matter how the vote goes, no one's going to be happy about this. So I do believe we are a city and a state of immigrants, but I believe that we should follow the rules as we do in all other things. We follow our laws, and that's why they're made, and that's why we are the great city and the country that we are today. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councilors, any further comments? I'll just briefly say a couple of things. One thing that always I found very strange was that, and thankfully we don't hear it quite as often anymore, but the idea of aliens, whether illegal or any other kind of alien, was a word that always bothered me. And I think the reason for that, you know, and that word has been applied to our neighbors and coworkers and employees. To me, that concept of an illegal alien or a person who is an alien is alien to Albuquerque. I mean, our history has been one of, from the beginning, as a city and as a community, has been diverse. By its very nature, a diverse community. And we have always welcomed and encouraged immigrants in Albuquerque, and we continue to. We welcome immigrants to live, work, study here. And the reason is that they contribute to our shared values and our culture and our economy. How many times have you heard us brag, or have, you know, we ourselves would brag about our diverse cultures, and really unique in America, in the United States of America, I think, of how diverse we are, and that, you know, our culture depends on the ebb and flow of immigration. And I find it disconcerting with some of the current policies that are being enacted out of Washington, that this could really hurt our economy in New Mexico. I mean, our relations with Mexico, and certainly, you know, I come from the construction industry, and I'll tell you what, the construction industry would grind to a halt without immigrants. And I've had the pleasure of working with people from Mexico and Central America, are some of the finest, hardest working, most competent constructors of buildings, which is my chosen profession, that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. So this is some common sense. I think it's true that it's just a reiteration of policy that was created in 2000. And my hat's off to the councilors who created that. That was a bipartisan vote. So it is a reiteration of that, and there's some aspirational language and some historic language in the whereases that I think is very important, maybe somewhat different from what was in that original resolution. But it does affirm, and the intention of the memorial is to affirm that policy that already exists in the city of Albuquerque, and by the way, is reflected in things like the standard operating procedures of Albuquerque Police Department. So that's where we stand. I want to thank my co-sponsors and Councilor Sanchez, who I know I had to apologize to him. And it's like he was busy doing somebody's taxes, and we ended up getting 4 names on the bill, and then that's the end of the line on a co-sponsorship. But I do want to thank everybody, and thank also our predecessors on City Council who enacted the original legislation. Is there anybody who would like to close before we take a vote? Councilor Pena.
I can close, and I just, you know, I just want to thank you, Councilor Jones, for your comments. You know, I just really appreciate your courage and everything you do on this council, and I know that you do support our community, and you know, I just want to say that because just think it's important. I will just close by saying again that I want to thank Councilor Winter. He's right. You know, the memorial has no legal standing. It's actually the resolution that you put in place many years ago that's actually the force of law. And I just appreciate your foresight back then, you know, and who we are as a city. And you know, the main reason that I co-sponsored this along with my colleagues, and I appreciate you talking about Councilor Sanchez, because when I talked to you, Councilor, you had said that you were actually contemplating putting one together too, and then you mentioned that you already had talked to a couple of other councilors. So again, I apologize, Councilor Sanchez, because I definitely know you would have been on the memorial. But you know, I just the reason I sponsored the memorial is just to reaffirm Albuquerque's commitment to safeguard the civil rights, safety, and dignity of all our residents. And that's just, I think it's important with these uncertain times that we're faced right now. And I would just encourage and ask for all your support.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second for a due pass on Memorial 4. All those in favor say yes and raise your hands. Yes. Opposed? No. And that passes on a 6-1 vote. Council will take a dinner break.